Hey traders, welcome back to the weekly Forex Forecast. The US dollar continues to sell off and it doesn't look like it's going to be stopping next week. Softer data out to the US is bringing down yields in the US, and dollar shorts this week are one of the top plays that I'm going to be looking at on my watch list. If we look at the chart itself, you can see after we had that yen spike, the dollar had that big sell-off. We've consolidated and it looks like we're making our way down to the 101.69. And because of this, I also like euro longs heading into this week, as we're going to see. And I'm going to show you the other top setups that I'm going to be looking at trading next week in today's video. So looking at the portfolio selection part, you can see I want to point out this first and foremost. The Japanese yen sentiment, it's been so extreme, but now we've started to see it kind of washing out and neutralizing. Very often when you get extreme sentiment, like in the Swiss franc, and it starts to neutralize, that tends to signal the next leg up, in this case, in the Japanese yen. However, the Japanese yen rally was so strong, when you get a move that strong, that much momentum, the correction tends to be similar to the size of the momentum. So you have huge momentum. The more momentum you have, essentially, you have longer periods of consolidation. So we may need to consolidate a little bit more, but either way, still favoring Japanese yen long plays next week. I did short pound yen and Aussie yen last week in the members area. Pound yen I had to scratch, Aussie yen was a nice trade from last week, and I'm looking for those setups again this week. Had to wait all the way till Friday actually to get anything good out of the yen last week, but I do like yen long plays once again this week as a top idea. The second thing we're going to be looking at to the upside in today's video is the euro. Now the euro sits number 2 here out of all of these currencies. And what we're looking at here is essentially an outperformance of the euro because we're also seeing a weakness in the DXY. So we're seeing the dollar sell off and the euro, being 57% of the dollar index, is benefiting from that. So euro longs, Japanese yen longs, definitely two of the top things I'm going to be looking at this week. Alongside to the short side, CAD short plays. We're also seeing negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians being extended. There does seem to be some optimism around a ceasefire. The Israeli shekel has been rallying for 2 weeks, and very often the currency is, for a nation, is the truth serum, right? Like the cash flow is for a business. I tweeted this out this week. And essentially what it's saying is if you've got the shekel in Israel, which is rallying for 2 weeks straight, there is some genuine optimism from those in the know and those positioning that there's going to be some kind of agreement and a de-escalation of the tensions between Israel and Iran. Now, this is important because that's going to necessarily mean that there is not going to be a risk to the upside in crude oil as a catalyst. We could see crude oil going up for other reasons, but that particular bullish crude oil catalyst is off the table, at least for another week. Negotiations pick up next week, towards the end of next week in Cairo. So on that basis, there's no real boost to the Canadian dollar coming by the looks of it next week. So I favor Canadian dollar shorts once again, alongside US dollar shorts. So that really just leaves one more currency to the upside and one more currency to the downside. And out of the franc and the pound, I favor the pound because the Swiss franc has a safe haven aspect to it. And the pound is now benefiting from this kind of weakness in the dollar and this near-term kind of risk on that we're seeing. So I do favor pound longs going into next week. And out of the Aussie and New Zealand, I favor it against New Zealand. We had rate cuts out of New Zealand last week. And so between Aussie and New Zealand, I do favor shorts in New Zealand dollar next week. So we're going to be looking at in today's video, although you could look for Swiss franc long plays and you could also look for Aussie short plays, especially against the yen, the euro, etc. My top setups heading into next week are going to be the Canadian dollar, Japanese yen to the downside, US dollar yen to the downside, New Zealand yen to the downside. We're going to be looking at EurCad to the upside, Euro New Zealand to the upside, and Euro dollar to the upside. I'm also going to be looking at pound New Zealand to the upside, pound dollar to the upside, and pound CAD to the upside. Kicking off the watch list then, as always with crude oil. Now that catalyst of escalation in the Middle East is off the table, at least for next week, by the looks of it. And so crude oil shorts seem to be without that risk next week. I do like crude oil to the downside. It's kind of neutral. But what I'm going to be looking for next week is any pullback in crude oil. I'm going to be looking for a breach of the 81.25. And if we start to trade into these lows over here, we breach the 81.25, we become overbought intra-week. And I'm going to be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the downside in this asset. If we blast through here and we test the second upper bound at the 84.23, we become extremely overbought intra-week, and this would be where I'd be looking for a second position potentially. If I was already short and I was on the wrong side of a losing trade, I'd be looking to cost average it above the 84.23. And if I'm not involved and it blasts through here and tests here, an initial position would be a great place above the 84.23 as well in this asset. Now, most of the time, you're not going to reach the second upper and lower bounds, these gold ones. They're not expected to be hit, but they're there kind of as a safety net. If you do blast through and you test them, those are areas where you can kind of cost average, or even better, like I say, take an initial position. Now, the final thing you can look for next week, of course, if we start to pull back in crude oil, and instead of breaching the upper bound, instead of turning overbought intra-week, you may just get a breakdown like this, pulls back, and then you break down with momentum. If you get that breakdown with momentum intra-week, you can look for that bear flag setup. Usually you only get one of them in the 4 hours. In the 1 hours, you get one or two in a week usually. But you can look for that bear flag setup into the 75.28. Below there is where I'd be looking to put profits, because you only have a 30% chance below this level really of continuing to the downside with any significance next week in oil. Okay, so opening up the Forex pairs with the yen plays, because the yen long plays are my favorite heading into next week. Starting with CAD yen, because CAD is the best short in the hedge dash algorithm. And you can see this sell-off last week, this market, I mean, these yen pairs, they breached through their upper bounds last week. They turned overbought intra-week, and then they reversed and sold back down. It was this reversal that I caught late Friday, time-stamped in the GMT members area. And this is exactly what I'm going to be looking for again heading into this week. A nice 1 or 2 day reversal in these assets if they become overbought. So any continued pullback in the yen, and like I said, this is such a big move down, this correction may need to pull back, push higher, and continue to correct. Now, if this is a correction, as it looks like, the beauty of trading corrections is usually when they breach their upper bounds, they've got even more chance of selling off, because only when you get reversal markets with momentum, that's usually when you take a loss, you know, if you're fading this stuff intra-week. But any kind of corrective market, and that's why we identify first and foremost the strongest and the weakest pairs to trade, but any corrective market should have a higher chance of actually reversing back inside. So I'm looking for the Japanese yen to continue higher, to breach the 109.47. I really like the fact that we've got this low over here, because this is probably pulling back to retest the underside of this. So if we breach the 109.47, would become overbought intra-week. We trade into the low, stair-stepping it, and that would be a great place in this area to start to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the downside in CAD yen. If for whatever reason we break through and we see some momentum into and above the 111.03, we become extremely overbought intra-week, I would be looking for a potential short as well, whether I'm short and cost averaging it or an initial position. And finally, if we start to pull back, but instead of becoming overbought intra-week, you get that momentum leg down, you can look for the follow through into the 106.34 next week. Next is US dollar yen. Now again, really nice reversals towards the end of the week. It was Aussie yen that I actually caught this reversal in. But coming to this week, I'm going to be looking for the same thing again. So any continued pullback in US dollar yen. And remember, we looked at the fact that the yen sentiment, that extremely bullish sentiment in the yen, has started to wash out, so we could actually start to get the next leg down fairly soon. So any continued pullback and a breach of the 149.81, this market becomes overbought intra-week. I would be looking for a reversal for 1 or 2 days down in US dollar yen next week. If we break through here, you can see the second upper bound sits right at the prior low. If for any reason this breaks through and I'm not already short, and I get the opportunity to short at the prior low over here and above the 152.03, at the point where this market would be extremely overbought intra-week, that would be a fantastic opportunity. So I do like those two plays for this market heading into next week. And of course, if we start to pull back, you get US dollar weakness. It's so weak that you don't test the upper bound. You can look for that bear flag setup into the 145.38. And the final yen pair is New Zealand yen. Again, I'm going to be looking for shorts if we start to get overbought intra-week at the 90.81. I would really like it if we breached this upper bound and we tested this high. That would be a great place to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the downside in New Zealand yen. If for whatever reason we break through here and we break through the 92.23, that's the point at which this asset becomes extremely overbought intra-week. And I would also consider a short from this area. And as always, if you start to pull back and you just break out intra-week to the downside with momentum, it's the 87.96 that I'd be identifying as a kind of intra-week short profit target in New Zealand yen. Okay, so moving on to the euro pairs, starting with EurCad. Now this is a market I can only be a buyer of. I cannot short this market next week. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for a breach of the 1.4972. This market, which is a strong market, will turn oversold intra-week. And I like the fact that we already have a low down here. It looks like we're forming this A, B, C. We come down, false breakout below this low and also below the 1.4972. This would be a great place to look for that reversal for 1 or 2 days up. You could actually see a bigger swing trade here back into the highs. But, you know, really all I'm trying to capture on a short-term basis is 1 to 2 days worth of move. So that's the first thing I'll be looking at. If for whatever reason we break through there and come all the way down to the 1.4860, you're probably looking at a bigger reversal. But if it does that, although unexpected, if it does that, I will be prepared to buy this either again or maybe for an initial position if we turn extremely oversold intra-week below the 1.4860. And finally, we may just correct towards the 1.4972 and then we start to break out with momentum. And if you get that, you can look for that bull flag opportunity into the 1.5197. Next is Eurodollar. Now, Eurodollar has been starting to outperform with that DXY weakness, and it looks like this is going to continue into next week. So I do like Eurodollar long plays heading into next week. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see this pull back with this kind of ABC. That would be fantastic. Breach the 1.0944, so it becomes oversold intra-week, and it retests, it stair steps this kind of breakout area here, this prior high in the 4 hours. This is going to be a great place if we can get this to look for a reversal to the upside in the euro. Again, could very easily see this swing trade up towards the upper bound over the next couple of weeks, but I'm personally going to be looking on a short-term basis for 1 or 2 days up. And if we start to break through there, as always, for whatever reason, below the 1.0861 is where we become extremely oversold. I doubt that will happen, but in the off chance that it does, this would be the second place I'll be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in euro dollar. And if we start to break out intra-week, very much like EurCad, so we just consolidate. Sometimes you have a very, very strong market, you don't make it all the way to the lower bound, you start to break out, you get these fast markets, and you can look for that momentum bull flag setup into the 1.11117. And the final euro pair I like is Euro-New Zealand. Now, we had those cuts out of New Zealand last week, so I can either be a buyer here or do nothing. I can't short this market next week. Any pullback ideally below taking out this low and them turning oversold intra-week below the 1.80407, also stair step in these prior highs over here. This would be a great place to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in Euro-New Zealand. If we break through here for whatever reason and we breach the 1.7866, we become extremely oversold intra-week and we have a much higher chance of reversing down at this level. And I would be looking again, whether I'm long or not, for a potential opportunity from below here. And the final thing you can look for, especially as we're already kind of flagging, we're kind of ranging here a bit in Euro-New Zealand. But if we do start to pull back towards the lower bound and instead of testing it, we break out, so we get close and then you see momentum very similar to this, you can look for that breakout bull flag into the prior high over here at the 1.8389. Okay, so moving on to the pound pair, starting with pound CAD. Now, I like pound CAD only to the upside. I cannot short this market next week. You can see we're already kind of trending higher on the 4 hour basis. What I'd like to see then is a pullback, a breach of the 1.75928. We turn oversold intra-week, and that's going to be a great opportunity to look for a reversal for 1 or 2 days to the upside. If we break through here for whatever reason, again, it's not expected, but if it happens and we get to the 1.7480 and I might already be long, this would be the second place I'd be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in pound CAD. And the third and final thing you can look for to the upside is if we get that breakout intra-week. So we start to flag, perhaps we pull back, we fail to turn oversold and we just break out instead. Usually you get those kind of bull flags once on the 4 hours, as I said before, into the 1.78176. Next is pound dollar. Now, one thing I really like about this, and I like in general, is when we get technical setups around the levels. So we get, for example, a market which can become oversold during the week and then it stair steps up or a high, stuff like this. Now, what I really like about this is that the major high in pound dollar sits right up here below the 1.3050. So there's a very good chance that we make our way up to here. If we pull back, what I'd like to see first is any pullback and a breach of the 1.28390. This is where I would primarily be interested. We turn oversold intra-week on a strong market. This is where I'd be primarily interested in a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside. Again, could very easily see this swing trading and working its way up to the prior high over the next week or so. The second thing you can look for is if for whatever reason, as unexpected as it is, if we break down below the 1.2734 and we come in, there's a high over here, If we do end up down in this area because of some unexpected catalyst, this would be the second place I'd be looking for potential buying opportunity in pound dollar. And of course, we've already got this momentum breakout. So you can see this could very easily, pull back, stair step the prior high, and then you start to get that kind of breakout next week with momentum, and you can look for that bull flag into the prior high and up to the 1.30502. And the final pound pair we're going to look at before moving on to gold and silver is pound New Zealand. Now you can see where we got those cuts by the RBNZ, big rally to the upside. So I am looking for continued upside. What I'd like to see first is if we could pull back and trade below the 2.1202. This would be a great place, especially if we breach this and we take out that low from the RMBZ rally. This would be a great place below here to start to look for that 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside. You can see it's kind of chopping around. If for whatever reason we break through here, I'd be very surprised, but if we did trade below the 2.1023, this would be the second place I'd be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in this asset, whether I'm already involved and managing that trade, cost averaging it, or with an initial position, that would be the second place. And the third thing you can look for is we've already started to break out with that interest rate decision. So there's a good chance actually we just correct towards the lower bound. We fail to actually test it, and instead you get another rally to the upside and you get that kind of bull flag into the 2.1560. Okay, so wrapping up the video with gold and silver as always, and in previous videos I've been highlighting the fact that I would be looking for bullish setups in gold and could be looking at bearish setups in silver. And the reason for that was because in the hedge dash algorithms, we were seeing gold in the positive side, we were seeing silver slipping towards the negative side and in the negative side at one point. And there was a clear discrepancy between being long gold and long silver. In fact, long gold, short silver was the better play. Now, however, we've seen the US dollar starting to lag, starting to underperform. It's heading down in the performance metrics in the hedge dash system. And what this does is this puts gold longs and silver longs back on the table, and my preference heading into next week. So any pullback in gold, you can see we've already started to break out. We've got this kind of high, we sell off, then we flag. And very often, if you've got a key area of resistance and you trade into it and you get a big sell-off, that shows that you've got that failure. You trade into it, you sell off, you see you got that failure. Now this time, notice how we started to sell off and then we held. We didn't get the big multiple candles, big multiple candles. We sell off, we hold, and when you hold under a key area of resistance like that, very often when you consolidate under it, it's a good example of when you're going to see a breakout. You tend to see these markets break out if you trade into a key area of resistance. Instead of getting momentum sell-off, you see it consolidate underneath it. So we did get that, and we're starting to break higher. So any pullback, it would be great if this breached through here and tested the 245205. Any trade below here next week, gold becomes oversold intra-week, and this is going to be a great place to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal. If for whatever reason, and again, unexpected, but if we do break through there and we head all the way down to the 239641, this will be the second place, whether I'm cost averaging an initial position or looking for an initial entry. This would be the second place I'd be interested in buying gold next week for a 1 or 2 day reversal higher. And the third thing, especially as we're already breaking out, you may just get that pullback, that Fibonacci you can see from here, and you may get that breakout, momentum, and then follow through that bull flag into the 2563.34. But I can only buy gold next week. Selling gold is not an option for me. So wrapping up the video with silver, as always, this market has been underperforming. You can see why I've been saying, looking to be short silver, long gold has been a play that we can look at in the videos. However, this week, with that underperformance of the US dollar looking to continue into next week, we are set for further upside, and I do favor long positions in silver once again this week. So any pullback in silver, what I'd preferably like to see is a breach of the 27.78. Then this market becomes oversold intra-week. That's where I'd love to step in and look for a 1 or 2 day buying opportunity in silver. This is another market that looks like you could get that swing trade higher into the upper bound or higher over the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, if the dollar continues to underperform. However, I'm only really looking for 1 or 2 days up. If it breaks through there and takes out the second lower bound, have to be really because of an unexpected bullish catalyst from the dollar. If that were to happen and we took out this lower bound here, I would be looking potentially for a 1 or 2 day reversal, whether I'm long or whether this is a secondary position. But I don't think that's going to happen next week. It's very unlikely. Could happen, but it's very unlikely. What I think is most likely to happen is we breach this level, we turn oversold and we start to turn, or we start to flag and then you get that intra-week breakout and you can look for the bull flag in silver into the 30.24, and that would be a great profit taking opportunity above this level for any intra-week longs next week in silver. So that is it from me for today, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, why not consider joining us in the GMT training room each day, where I look at the best markets as well as sharing real-time setups that I'm personally looking at trading with members as part of our GMT training program. Don't forget, you can also get a 2-week free trial to the cutting-edge hedge-trading app used in today's video by heading over to www.hedge-.com. Access to the cutting-edge hedge-platform is included with every GMT membership.